when my stepmother yanked my wrist. Her phone clattered to the floor, the screen still flashing red. She hissed that nobody cared about me, claiming if I disappeared, no one would notice. I was 24, but the words cut deep. 2 weeks later, millions of strangers watched that exact moment on their screens. Suddenly, the woman who called me invisible was being stared at by the whole world, and I finally had to learn how to be seen. My name is Harper Lane, and at 24 years old, I was sitting in the freezing cold green room of the biggest talk show in Chicago, watching my life fall apart and come back together on a 20-inch monitor. The air smelled of hairspray and stale coffee. A makeup artist was hovering inches from my face, dabbing at a non-existent spot of shine on my forehead with a sponge that felt rough against my skin. She was trying to be gentle, but her hands were shaking slightly. I could not blame her. Everyone in this room was walking on eggshells around me, treating me like I was made of glass that had already shattered. Through the earpiece she was adjusting, I could hear the muffled chaos of the control room. A producer's voice cut through the static, sharp and urgent, instructing the technical director to cue the clip. They called it the clip, capital T, capital C, as if it were a moon landing or a presidential assassination attempt. In a way, for the quiet suburb of Maple Grove, Indiana, it was exactly that. I looked at the monitor mounted on the wall. The footage was grainy, shot from a distance through a window screen in partial darkness, but the audio was crystal clear. It was a loop of a nightmare. There was the familiar beige paint of my father's living room. There was the perfectly arranged throw pillows that no one was allowed to sit on. And there was Vanessa, my stepmother. On the screen, her face was twisted into a sneer that her 300,000 TikTok followers had never seen. Her hand was clamped around my wrist. Even through the low resolution of the video, you could see the whiteness of her knuckles. She yanked my arm, her body jerking with the force of her rage, and her phone clattered to the floorboards. The camera she had been holding kept recording from the ground, capturing the ceiling fan and the underside of her chin as she leaned down. Then came the voice. That voice. It was not the honey-dipped soprano she used for her Sunday roast with the fam videos. It was a guttural, venomous whisper that seemed to vibrate the speakers in the green room. Nobody cares about you. If you disappeared, no one would even notice. The makeup artist pulled her hand back as if the words had physically burned her. I did not flinch. I had heard that sentence every day for 12 years, sometimes spoken aloud, sometimes implied in the way she cropped me out of a family portrait or forgot to set a place for me at the dinner table. The only difference was that this time, 28 million other people had heard it too. There was a sharp knock on the doorframe. I turned my head to see the host of the show standing there. He looked exactly like he did on television, polished and concerned, with a suit that probably cost more than my entire college tuition. He held a clipboard against his chest, his expression arranged into a mask of professional empathy. "Harper," he said, stepping into the room but leaving the door open enough for the bustling hallway noise to bleed in. "We go live in 5 minutes. I just wanted to check in personally. We are going to play the full clip right at the top of the segment. Are you absolutely sure you want to do that? The ratings are projected to be massive, obviously, but it is incredibly raw. It is going to be painful to watch that again in front of a live audience." I looked back at the monitor. Vanessa was pulling my arm again. "Nobody cares about you." She was right. In a way, for a decade, nobody had. The neighbors saw a polite woman who baked cookies for the church fundraiser. My teachers saw a quiet girl who faded into the background. My father saw whatever version of reality Vanessa told him to see. I turned back to the host and smoothed the fabric of my skirt. "Pain is the only thing they ever gave me," I told him, my voice steady. "It is the only inheritance I have from that house. At least this time. I can put it to use." He nodded, looking relieved that he would not have to scramble for a replacement guest. He gave me a tight smile and vanished back into the corridor. The makeup artist finished pinning the microphone to my collar, her fingers cold against my neck. As I sat there waiting for the stage manager to collect me, my mind flashed through the insanity of the last 14 days. It had started as a slow trickle and then became a tsunami. It began with a single notification on my old phone, then 10, then 1,000. By the time I woke up the morning after the video was posted, the internet had turned my trauma into a movement. I remembered staring at the screen, watching the numbers climb. 1 million views, 3 million views, 5 million views. The hashtag #NobodyCares challenge was trending #1 in the country. But it was not people mocking me. It was people stitching the video, looking directly into the camera, and saying, "I care." It was teenagers in their bedrooms, mothers in their cars, lawyers, baristas, mechanics. Total strangers were crying over a girl they did not know, rewriting the narrative Vanessa had spent a decade carefully constructing. My inbox was flooded. There were emails from domestic abuse advocacy groups. There were messages from lawyers offering pro bono representation. There were interview requests from every major network in New York and Los Angeles. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and strangely vindicating. For years, I had walked through the world feeling like a ghost. I had internalized Vanessa's voice so deeply that I stopped seeing my own reflection in mirrors. I believed her. I believed that my existence was a burden, a smudge on the lens of her perfect life. I had believed her right up until the moment a stranger standing behind a curtain decided to hit record. That was the twist nobody saw coming. The video was not posted by me. I would never have been brave enough. It was not posted by my father, who was likely cowering in the garage when it happened. It was not even posted by Vanessa by accident. It was Josie. Josie was the 16-year-old girl who lived in the house next door. She was quiet, edgy, and spent most of her time smoking clove cigarettes on her back porch. Vanessa hated her. 2 months ago, during one of her live streams where she was showing off her organic herb garden, Vanessa had pointed the camera over the fence at Josie, who was just sitting there reading a book. Vanessa had laughed, a cruel, tinkling sound, and told her followers that Josie was trash and what happens when parents do not raise their kids with Christian values. She mocked Josie's dyed hair and her combat boots, using a teenager as a prop to elevate her own status as the superior suburban matriarch. Vanessa thought she was untouchable. She thought the world only existed within the frame of her iPhone. She forgot that other people had cameras too. She forgot that sound travels through open windows in the summer. Josie had been standing in her dark bedroom, filming through the blinds, waiting for a moment of hypocrisy. She caught the Holy Grail. She caught the mask slipping off. The irony was suffocating. Vanessa's entire life was built on the channel Stepmom Goals Vanessa. It was a shrine to her own ego. Her feed was an endless scroll of perfectly lit dinner parties, filtered selfies with my stepsister Maddie, and captions about the sanctity of family. Love is the secret ingredient. She would write under a photo of a lasagna that I had actually cooked, "Blessed to be the mother hen of this flock." She would caption a picture of a family game night where I was conveniently sent to the store to buy ice right before the photo was taken. I was always the elbow in the corner of the frame, the shadow in the doorway, the extra place setting that was removed before the shutter clicked. I was the prop she used to show how benevolent she was, the difficult stepchild she so graciously tolerated. But Josie changed the angle. The stage manager appeared at the door. 5 minutes. "Harper," he said, "you are on in 5. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but my spine was straight. I looked at the monitor one last time. The producer had paused the video on a freeze frame of my face. I looked terrified in the image. I looked small. I looked invisible. I was not that girl anymore. The world had seen me. The sheer force of their attention had dragged me out of the shadows and placed me under the blinding lights of this studio. I walked toward the door, the sound of the studio audience clapping for the segment intro rumbling through the walls like distant thunder. I thought about the millions of people watching at home. I thought about Vanessa, who I knew was watching from a hotel room somewhere, probably calling her crisis management team, trying to spin this, trying to find a filter that could fix a shattered reputation. She could not edit this out. She could not delete this comment section. I stepped into the hallway, the bright lights hitting my eyes. I was about to walk out there and destroy the silence that had held me hostage since I was 11 years old. This was not just a story about a viral video. That was too simple. That was just the headline. This was the story of how a single sentence, "Nobody cares about you," backfired so spectacularly that it forced the entire country to pull up a chair and listen to everything they had missed while they were double-tapping on lies. I took a breath. The stage doors opened. It was time to be seen. To understand how I ended up on that stage in Chicago, you have to understand the geography of Maple Grove, Indiana. It was the kind of town where the property lines were drawn with invisible ink and moral judgments were passed over casseroles at the Methodist Church. Before the world knew us as a hashtag, the neighbors knew us as the Lane family. The picture of Midwestern resilience, my father, Greg, was the grieving widower who had found a second chance at love. And Vanessa was the miracle who had walked into our lives wearing pastel cardigans and a smile that seemed permanently fixed in place. I was 11 years old when she officially moved in. In the beginning, Vanessa did not feel like a villain. She felt like oxygen in a house that had been holding its breath since my mother died. She knew exactly how to play the part of the savior. She filled the fridge with fresh produce instead of the frozen dinners Dad and I had been surviving on. She bought curtains. She organized the pantry. She touched my shoulder when she walked past me in the kitchen. A light, breezy touch that felt like affection if you did not pay attention to how quickly she pulled her hand away. I remember one afternoon specifically, about a month after the wedding. I was sitting at the kitchen table struggling with a watercolor assignment for school. Vanessa had come in, carrying a shopping bag. She pulled out a professional-grade set of acrylic paints, the kind with real pigment, not the chalky stuff we used in art class. She set it down in front of me and lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "You have an eye. Harper," she had said, her blue eyes wide and sincere. "We are going to make this house beautiful, you and me. You are just as important as anyone in this family, and do not let anyone tell you otherwise." It was a sentence that tasted like sugar. It was sweet, addictive, and completely hollow. At 11, I did not know that people could use kindness as a down payment for future neglect. I just felt seen. I felt like I had a teammate. Then Maddie arrived. Maddie was Vanessa's biological daughter from her first marriage. She was 2 years younger than me, a whirlwind of blonde curls and kinetic energy. When she moved into the room across the hall, the gravitational pull of the house shifted overnight. It was subtle at first, like the slow tilt of a sinking ship. Conversations at dinner began to pivot. Before, Dad might have asked about my science project. Now, the air was filled with talk of Maddie's dance recitals, Maddie's piano lessons, Maddie's struggle with math that required hours of patient tutoring at the kitchen table while I did my homework alone on the living room floor. It was not that they were mean to me. That would have been easier to fight. If Vanessa had locked me in a closet or starved me, I could have pointed to a bruise and said, "Look, this is wrong, but you cannot report a missing space in a conversation to Child Protective Services. You cannot show a police officer a silence where a compliment should have been." The erasure happened in degrees. It culminated on my 12th birthday. My birthday falls in mid-April, that year. It happened to coincide with the regional finals for Maddie's jazz dance competition. For weeks, the house hummed with the sound of sequined costumes being zipped and unzipped, frantic searches for bobby pins, and the smell of hairspray. 2 days before the date, Vanessa found me in the laundry room folding towels. She gave me a sympathetic pout, the kind you give a puppy that has hurt its paw. "Harper, honey," she said, leaning against the dryer. We were thinking, since the whole family is going to be celebrating Maddie's big win this weekend anyway, it just makes sense to combine the parties, right? It saves money. And honestly, it is better for the environment. We will do a big family bash. I nodded. What else could I do? I wanted to be a good sport. I wanted to be part of the team. The party was held in our backyard. There were streamers in gold and silver, the colors of Maddie's dance studio. Friends from church came over. Dad was manning the grill, laughing louder than he had in years. Everyone was fawning over Maddie, who was wearing her medal around her neck, doing pirouettes on the grass. Then came the cake. It was a massive sheet cake from the best bakery in town. It had white frosting with gold piping. In the center, written in elegant, looping script, it said, "Congratulations, Madison, star of the show." I stared at the cake, waiting for my name. I scanned the corners, the edges, looking for a tiny happy birthday. Harper squeezed in somewhere. There was nothing, just smooth, uninterrupted white frosting. Vanessa appeared at my elbow, holding a small paper plate. On it sat a single vanilla cupcake, unlit, with a plastic ring stuck into the icing. "Oh, sweetie," she whispered, loud enough for me to hear, but quiet enough that the guests nearby didn't catch the tone. "The bakery messed up the order and forgot to add your name to the big one. Can you believe that? But look, I saved you this. We will do a special dinner just for you next week. I promise, just us girls." She winked and handed me the cupcake. That special dinner never happened. The next week, Maddie had a toothache. The week after that, Vanessa had a migraine. The promise evaporated, just like the steam rising off the grill. I stood there in the backyard, holding my cupcake while everyone sang, "For she is a jolly good fellow to Maddie." I watched my father singing along, his eyes beaming with pride at his stepdaughter. He did not look for me. He did not notice that his own daughter was standing by the recycling bin, eating a dry cupcake alone. That was the day I started learning how to disappear. I realized that if I made myself useful, I could stay in the room. If I tried to be a participant, I was an interruption. But if I was the help, I was tolerated. I became the family historian. I was the one who picked up the camera when Vanessa wanted a group shot. "Take one of us by the tree," she would chirp, pulling Dad and Maddie in close. I would lift the heavy camera, looking through the viewfinder. I would frame them perfectly, the loving couple and the talented child. I would adjust the focus until they were sharp and beautiful, and then I would snap the photo. I did this hundreds of times over the next few years. I curated the visual history of the Lane family. If you looked through our family albums from those years, you would think Greg and Vanessa only had one child. I was a ghost in my own house, existing only as the finger pressing the shutter button. Vanessa never raised her voice. That was her genius. She destroyed my confidence with a smile. She used comparison like a scalpel. One evening, we were in the living room. Maddie was showing off a new dance routine. She was graceful. I will give her that. She leaped across the carpet, landing in a perfect split. Vanessa clapped her hands together, delighted. "Look at her. Greg, she just shines. Does she not? She has this fire in her." Then she turned her head slowly and looked at me. I was sitting on the sofa reading a textbook. "And Harper," she said, her voice dropping to a flat, practical register. "Harper is so stable. Stable is good too. Greg, the world needs people who are just fine with being in the background. Not everyone can be a star." Stable. It sounded like a compliment, but the way she said it made it feel like a diagnosis. She was telling me my place. Maddie was the sky. I was the pavement. Maddie was the art. I was the frame. The only person who saw me was my grandmother, Eleanor. Eleanor was my mother's mother. She lived 3 towns over, but she drove her rusted sedan to Maple Grove once a month to check on me. She was a woman made of sharp angles and cigarette smoke, and she hated Vanessa with a quiet, burning intensity. When I was 12, a few months after the birthday incident, Eleanor came to visit. She found me on the back porch, editing a video for Vanessa. By then, Vanessa had started dabbling in early social media, wanting to document their perfect life. Eleanor sat down next to me. She did not say hello. She just reached into her oversized purse and pulled out a book. It was a journal. The cover was thick, worn leather that smelled like earth and tobacco. The pages were blank and cream-colored, heavy enough that ink wouldn't bleed through. "Your father is blind," Eleanor said, her voice raspy, "and that woman is a vampire who feeds on attention. But you, Harper, you are disappearing. I can see your edges fading." She placed the journal in my hands. It felt heavy, substantial. "I want you to write in this," she commanded, "but there is a rule. You are not allowed to write about them. You do not write about how pretty Maddie looked or what Vanessa cooked for dinner. You write about you, every time you feel like you do not exist. You write your name in here. You write it so big it takes up the whole page if you have to. I ran my thumb over the leather. Why? I asked. Because, she said, looking straight into my eyes, in this book, you are the main character, and you need to practice that, or you will forget what it feels like. That night, the house was loud. Vanessa had bought a new camcorder and was filming a vlog in the kitchen. I could hear her high-pitched laughter ringing through the hallways. Okay, everyone, smile. Say cheese. Look at this beautiful family dinner. I could hear the clatter of forks, the sound of my father chuckling, the performative joy that they turned on whenever the red light was blinking. I did not go into the kitchen. I walked out to the front porch and sat on the swing in the dark. The air was thick with the sound of crickets. Through the window, I could see the warm glow of the kitchen, the three of them framed like actors on a stage. I opened the leather journal on my lap. I took a pen and pressed it hard against the first page, hard enough to dent the paper. I wrote one sentence. If there's any place in this world that remembers my name, maybe it is only these pages. I sat there for a long time, listening to them record a life that did not include me, and for the first time, I did not try to find a way into the frame. I just kept writing. High school was not a rebellion for me. It was a holding cell. While other teenagers were sneaking out to parties or getting their hearts broken under the bleachers, I was methodically plotting a trajectory that would launch me out of Maple Grove's gravitational pull. By the time I was 16, I had discovered that I had a knack for two things that do not usually go together: data analysis and graphic design. I liked the clean, undeniable truth of numbers, and I liked the power of manipulating how people saw those numbers. Sophomore year, I entered the district's science and design fair. My project was a complex visualization of local water quality data, turned into a series of stark, compelling infographics. I spent 3 weeks glued to my laptop, refining the color palettes, making the data sing. When the judges pinned the blue rosette for first place on my display board, I looked out into the gymnasium crowd. The room was packed with parents holding camcorders and bouquets of flowers. I scanned every row. I looked for my father's gray windbreaker. I looked for Vanessa's perfectly highlighted hair. They were not there. I knew where they were. They were 40 miles away in a high school auditorium in Bloomington, watching Maddie perform a 3-minute tap dance routine to a medley of Broadway hits. When I got home that evening, the house was dark. They did not roll in until after 10 o'clock, buzzing with the adrenaline of the performance. Maddie was still wearing her stage makeup, carrying a bouquet of carnations that cost $20. I was sitting at the kitchen island, my blue ribbon lying on the granite countertop next to a glass of water. Vanessa breezed in, threw her keys into the bowl, and spotted the ribbon. She paused for a fraction of a second, just long enough to register it, before opening the fridge. "Oh, look at that," she said, her voice breezy and distracted. "You won. That is great. Harper." She pulled out a bottle of sparkling water and turned to me, offering a smile that did not reach her eyes. "You know, Greg," she called out to my father, who was loosening his tie in the hallway, "I was just thinking today how lucky we are that Harper is so low maintenance. Seriously, it is such a relief. I never have to worry about checking her homework or showing up to hold her hand. She just handles it." She took a sip of water and patted my hand. "It makes it so much easier for us to focus on Maddie, who really needs that extra support right now. You are a good, independent girl. Harper." She turned away to help Maddie get the bobby pins out of her hair. I sat there, fingering the silky fabric of the ribbon. She had turned my achievement into a justification for her neglect. My success was not a reason to celebrate. It was an excuse to ignore me. If I was doing well, I did not need them, and if I did not need them, they did not have to be there. But Vanessa found a use for my skills soon enough. This was the year the YouTube channel started to shift from a hobby into a hustle. Vanessa had upgraded from a smartphone to a DSLR camera, but she had no idea how to use the editing software. She would sit at the computer, groaning and sighing, until I eventually sat down and took the mouse. It started with simple cuts. Then it became color correction. Then it became sound mixing. By the time I was a junior, I was the post-production team for the Lane family life. I spent my Friday nights in my room, wearing headphones, staring at close-ups of Vanessa's face. I smoothed out her skin texture. I brightened her eyes. I cut out the moments where she snapped at my father for chewing too loudly. I crafted the illusion of the perfect wife and mother, frame by frame. I was building the pedestal she stood on. Whenever a new video went live and the comments started rolling in, "Vanessa, the editing on this is professional quality," or "Your transitions are so smooth," Vanessa would reply with a string of heart emojis. "Thank you," she would type. "Stayed up until 2 in the morning working on this one. A labor of love for my family." She never mentioned me, not once. In the credits, in the description, in the verbal sign-off, I did not exist. I was the ghost in the machine. My art teacher, Ms. Carter, was the only one who noticed the fatigue under my eyes. Ms. Carter was a sharp woman with paint-stained fingernails who treated teenagers like adults. She let me eat lunch in the art room, the only place in the school that smelled like turpentine and freedom. One afternoon, she walked up behind me while I was working on a thumbnail for Vanessa's next video on a school computer. I jumped, trying to minimize the window, but she held up a hand. "I have seen that channel," she said quietly. My stomach dropped. I did not want anyone at school to know about the Stepmom Goals universe. Ms. Carter pulled up a stool and sat next to me. "The graphic design work is excellent. Harper, the composition, the font hierarchy, it is professional level. But I noticed something missing." I stared at the keyboard. "I know." "Your name," she said. She reached into her messy desk drawer and pulled out a glossy brochure. It was for Lakehurst University in Chicago, specifically their College of Media and Design. "This is a top-tier program," she said, "and they have a scholarship for students with strong technical portfolios who demonstrate financial need or unique circumstances. I think you should apply." I touched the brochure. Chicago. It was only 3 hours away by car, but it felt like a different planet. "I cannot afford this," I said, "and my parents. They will not pay for it." Ms. Carter looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "You leave the portfolio to me. You just write the essay. And Harper, do not tell them until you have the acceptance letter in your hand." That night, I went home with the brochure tucked inside my chemistry textbook. I walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water and heard Vanessa's voice drifting in from the back porch. The screen door was open, and she was talking to Mrs. Higgins, the neighbor 2 houses down. I froze in the dark hallway. "Oh, Maddie is definitely looking at performing arts schools on the East Coast," Vanessa was saying, the ice clinking in her glass. "She is just made for the spotlight, you know? She needs a big city to contain all that talent." "What about Harper?" Mrs. Higgins asked. "She is graduating next year too, isn't she?" Vanessa laughed, a dismissive, airy sound. "Harper? Oh, no. Harper is a homebody. She is a sweet girl, but she is very fragile. She gets overwhelmed so easily. I really do not think she could handle a city. She will probably just go to the community college here in town. It is better for her to stay close to the nest where we can keep an eye on her. She is just not built for the real world." I stood there in the hallway, gripping my glass so hard I thought it might shatter. Fragile, not built for the real world. She was not just ignoring me anymore. She was actively campaigning against my future. She wanted to keep me small. She wanted to keep me here, in Maple Grove, editing her videos and making her look beautiful until I withered away. I went to my room and pulled the Lakehurst brochure out. I taped it to the inside of my closet door where no one else could see it. 2 days later, Eleanor showed up. She must have spoken to Ms. Carter. I never asked, and she never said. But the timing was too precise. She caught me in the driveway while Vanessa was out shopping with Maddie. "Get in the car," she said. We sat in her sedan, the engine idling. Eleanor reached into her purse and pulled out a thick white envelope. She shoved it into my hands. "Open it," she ordered. Inside was a stack of cash, hundreds and fifties, old bills that looked like they had been tucked under a mattress for years. "It is $3,400, Eleanor said. "It took me 5 years to squirrel that away." "Grandma, I cannot—" "Shut up and listen," she snapped, though her eyes were wet. "This is not for clothes. This is not for books. This is your go-to-hell fund. It is not enough to raise you. Harper, I wish it was, but it is enough to get you out of this house and set you up in a dorm room without you having to beg them for a dime." She gripped my chin with her bony hand, forcing me to look at her. "Vanessa thinks you are weak because you are quiet. She does not understand that you are just storing up energy. You get into that school in Chicago, and you go, 'Do you hear me?' You go." I nodded, clutching the envelope to my chest. 6 months later, the letter came. I waited until dinner to bring it out. We were eating meatloaf. Maddie was talking about a callback she had for a summer stock theater production. I placed the thick packet on the table, right next to the mashed potatoes. "I got into Lakehurst," I said. The silence was immediate. Greg stopped chewing. Vanessa put down her fork. "I got into the media and design program." I continued, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs, "and I got a partial scholarship. It covers 60% of the tuition." Vanessa picked up the letter. She did not look at the acceptance certificate. She looked at the tuition breakdown. "Harper," she said, her voice dripping with reasonable concern, "this is absurd. Even with the scholarship, the cost of living in Chicago is astronomical, and it is so far away." "It is 3 hours," I said. "It is too far," Greg chimed in, wiping his mouth, "and Vanessa is right. It is a lot of money. Harper, the community college here has a perfectly good computer program. You can live here for free. Why put yourself in debt? Why go all the way out there when everything you need is right here?" "It is safer here," Vanessa added, nodding at my father. "You know how you get anxious. Honey, we just do not want you to crash and burn." They were doing it. They were rewriting reality again. They were trying to turn my wings into weights. I looked at them. I looked at the meatloaf. I looked at the way the light hit the kitchen cabinets I had spent hours editing in their videos to make them look brighter than they were. "I have savings." I lied. Well, it was a half-truth. "And I can get student loans for the rest. I am going." Vanessa laughed, that same tinkling, condescending laugh she used when a follower asked a stupid question. "Oh, Harper, let's not be dramatic. We can talk about this later. Who wants dessert?" She dismissed it. She thought the conversation was over. She thought her no was the final law of the universe. But as I watched her cut the pie, I touched the pocket of my jeans where the key to my grandmother's safety deposit box was hidden. I did not say another word. I ate my pie. But inside my head, I was already packing. I was not asking for permission anymore. I was notifying them of a departure they were too blind to see coming. The Greyhound bus hissed as it pulled into the station, the air brakes sighing with a kind of mechanical exhaustion that matched my own bones. Through the grimy window, Chicago did not look like a city. It looked like a galaxy that had crashed into the earth. The lights of the skyline were aggressive and beautiful, piercing through the fog off Lake Michigan. I stepped onto the pavement, dragging my 2 suitcases, which contained every single thing I owned. I pulled out my phone. The screen was cracked, but it worked. I typed a message to my father. "I made it. Safe at the station." I watched the screen. The 3 little dots appeared, dancing for a second, and then vanished. The word "read" appeared in gray text. No reply. No. Good luck. We miss you. Just the digital acknowledgement that I was alive and no longer their problem. I slid the phone into my pocket and walked toward the taxi stand. It was the first time in my life I had walked somewhere without telling anyone when I would be back. My dorm room at Lakehurst University was in a building called The Stacks, a brutalist concrete block that looked like a bunker but smelled like freedom. The room itself was small. It had linoleum floors that were peeling at the corners and a radiator that clanged like a trapped pipe. But when I walked in and closed the door, the silence was absolute. There was no sound of Vanessa performing for a camera in the kitchen. There was no pressure to smile. There was just me and the four walls. I sat on the bare mattress and breathed in the smell of dust and floor wax, and it was the sweetest thing I had ever inhaled. My roommate arrived 2 hours later. Her name was Riley. She kicked the door open with a combat boot, carrying a crate of books and a ring light. "Hi," she said, breathless. "I am Riley. I am a sociology major. I am queer, and I make TikToks about systemic inequality. If you are going to be weird about any of that, tell me now so I can request a transfer." I stared at her. "I am Harper," I said, "and I am just happy to be here." Riley did not use social media the way Vanessa did. For Vanessa, a camera was a mirror to admire herself in. For Riley, it was a megaphone. She would sit on her bed, cross-legged, breaking down complex social theories into 60-second clips. She did not use filters. She did not edit out her stutter. She was raw and real. And watching her made me realize that the internet could be something other than a stage for narcissists. I threw myself into my major. I was studying media design and data analytics. It sounded dry, but to me, it was poetry. I learned that you could tell lies with statistics, but you could also use design to force people to see truths they wanted to ignore. In my second semester, I took a class called Narrative in the Digital Age with a professor named Dr. Novak. He was a terrifying man with thick eyebrows and a reputation for failing half the class. Our midterm assignment was to create a visual essay about personal space. I wrote a piece titled "The Cost of Being Cropped Out." I used heat maps to show where people stood in family photos. I used data points to track the frequency of names mentioned in conversation. It was a mathematical breakdown of my own erasure. I did not use real names, but the pain was encoded in every graph and pixel. Dr. Novak called me into his office a week later. He threw my paper onto his desk. "Harper," he said, leaning back in his chair, "do you know what you have done here?" I braced myself for a failing grade. "I am sorry." I started, "Is the data set too small?" He shook his head. "No. You are visualizing a ghost. You are taking the feeling of being invisible and giving it mass and weight. You know you are writing about things that millions of people feel but are too scared to name. Do not you? This is not just design. This is evidence." He got me a job at the university's media studio. It was a windowless room in the basement of the communications building, filled with high-end monitors and humming hard drives. I spent my nights there, editing videos for student organizations, polishing documentaries for the film department. I became known as the wizard who could save any footage. I could fix the lighting. I could clean the audio. I could make people look clearer, sharper, better than they actually were. It was ironic. I had escaped my family to find myself doing the exact same thing I had done for them, staying in the dark, making others shine. But at least here, I was getting paid $15 an hour. Then came sophomore year. It was a Tuesday night. I was in the dorm, eating instant noodles while Riley was scrolling through her For You page on the bed opposite me. Suddenly, Riley stopped scrolling. She sat up. "Harper," she said, her voice weirdly tight, "does your stepmom have a TikTok?" I froze. My fork hovered halfway to my mouth. "She did not when I left," I said. "She was just doing YouTube." Riley turned her phone around. The account name was Stepmom Goals Vanessa. It already had 50,000 followers. The bio read, "Wife, believer, boy mom at heart, girl mom by blessing." I took the phone. My hands felt cold. The first pinned video was a montage. It was titled My World. It showed the house in Maple Grove, looking brighter and cleaner than I remembered. It showed my father grilling. It showed Maddie, who was now 16 and gorgeous, laughing as she tried on prom dresses. It showed Vanessa looking lovingly at them. And then the voiceover started. "People ask me how I do it," Vanessa's voice cooed. "How I keep this family so close. It is simple. I cook for my husband and our daughter. I make sure our home is a sanctuary. Just the three of us against the world. Our daughter, singular. Just the three of us." I watched it again, I scrutinized every frame. I looked for a glimpse of my old bedroom door in the background. I looked for my shoes by the door. Nothing. The house had been purged of me. It was not just that I was away at college. It was that in Vanessa's narrative, I had never existed at all. She had finally achieved the perfect family she always wanted, and the final step of the renovation was deleting me. I handed the phone back to Riley. I felt sick, but I did not cry. It was a strange, hollow sensation, like realizing a limb had been amputated years ago and you were just now noticing the gap. She erased me, I whispered. She actually erased me. Riley looked furious. She started typing a comment, her thumbs flying. I am going to destroy her in the comments. I am going to... No, I said sharply. Stop. Do not engage. That is what she wants. She wants engagement. If you comment, you just boost the algorithm. I stood up and grabbed my backpack. I needed to get out of the room. I needed to go to the only place that made sense. I walked to the studio. It was midnight. The campus was quiet. I let myself in with my keycard and sat down at my workstation. The screens flickered to life, bathing my face in cool blue light. I pulled up a project I was working on for a nonprofit group. It was a campaign about homeless youth. I had hours of footage of kids talking about feeling unseen, about walking down crowded streets while people looked right through them. I scrubbed through the timeline. I watched their faces. I adjusted the color curves, bringing them out of the shadows, making their eyes pop, making sure the viewer could not look away. Dr. Novak walked in. He often worked late. He stood in the doorway, holding a thermos of coffee. He watched me work for a moment. "You are good at this, Harper," he said, "but you are angry tonight. I can see it in your cuts. They are sharp." I spun my chair around. "Is this all I am?" I asked him, my voice cracking. "Am I just the person who fixes the picture? Am I destined to be the one who sits in the dark and makes everyone else look human while I disappear?" I pointed at the screen. My stepmother started a channel. She tells the world she has one daughter. I am not even a footnote. I am a glitch she edited out. So maybe that is my role. Maybe I'm just the post-production for everyone else's life. Doctor, Novak took a sip of his coffee. He walked over and leaned against the desk. "You are looking at it wrong," he said. He pointed to the editing interface. "Vanessa is a content creator. She builds a facade. She points a camera at a lie and calls it truth. You? You are an editor. You have the power to cut through the noise. You choose what the audience sees. You choose where the focus goes." He looked me in the eye. "You were not born to make them look beautiful, Harper. You were born to adjust the lens. And when you finally decide to point that lens at the truth, God help anyone who is standing in your way." He patted my shoulder and walked out, leaving me alone with the humming machines. I looked back at the screen. I looked at the timeline, the jagged peaks of audio, the blocks of video. I realized he was right. I knew how the machinery of storytelling worked. Vanessa was playing a character. I was learning how to control the narrative. And one day, I would edit the final cut. I did not come back to Maple Grove to start a war. I came back because Eleanor's heart had stuttered, a terrifying arrhythmia that landed her in the county hospital and left her unable to drive or cook for herself. I was 24 years old. Halfway through a master's program I was paying for by waiting tables and editing freelance video. But when the doctor called, I packed my bag. I took a leave of absence for the semester. It was not a choice. Eleanor was the only person who had ever fought for me, so I would pause my life to fight for her. The problem was money. I had enough for gas and hospital cafeteria food, but not enough to rent a short-term apartment in town. So, with a stomach full of acid, I did the one thing I swore I would never do. I knocked on my father's front door. The house had changed. It was no longer just a suburban home. It was a production set. Vanessa had hit the algorithm jackpot. Her account, Stepmom Goals, Vanessa, had crossed 300,000 followers. She had secured brand deals with a subscription box company that sold organic cleaning supplies and a boutique that sold modest but trendy sundresses. The living room, once a place for watching television, was now a permanent studio. Two 18-inch ring lights stood like sentinels on either side of the sofa. The coffee table was styled with books that no one read, and a vase of tulips that were replaced every 3 days to ensure peak freshness for the camera. When I walked in, I tripped over a box of tripod attachments. "Careful!" Vanessa shrieked. She was standing in the kitchen, wearing a full face of makeup at 10 in the morning. "Do not touch the set dressing." "Harper, we are shooting a rigid schedule today." My father was sitting at the kitchen island, eating a bowl of cereal. He looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe Vanessa's presence had just expanded to fill all the available space. He gave me a weak smile. "Hey, kiddo," he said. "Good to have you back. Just try to keep your stuff in the guest room, okay? Vanessa needs the common areas clear." I was not a daughter returning home. I was a production assistant who had not read the call sheet. The tension started the second day. Vanessa cornered me while I was making coffee. She leaned against the counter, smelling of expensive vanilla perfume and ambition. "So, Harper," she began, her voice dropping to that persuasive, sugary tone she used when she wanted a refund at a store. I was thinking, you are in media, right? You understand how this industry works. It is all about narrative. I poured my coffee, not looking at her. "What is your point, Vanessa?" "Well," she said, examining her manicure, "my numbers are great, but engagement is stalling a bit. People love the happy family angle, but they want depth. I was thinking we could do a series. Reconnecting with my stepdaughter. You could come on, sit next to me, maybe talk about how challenging it was at first, but how my love and patience eventually won you over. It would be huge. And hey, I could tag your professional account. It is great exposure for your portfolio. Win-win." I set the coffee pot down hard. The glass clinked against the warmer. "You want me to lie," I said. "It is not lying," she said, her eyes narrowing slightly. "It is storytelling." "It is fiction," I corrected. "You want me to tell 300,000 strangers that you were patient? That you were loving? Vanessa, you forgot my birthday for 6 years in a row. You told the neighbors I was mentally unstable, so they would not ask why I never came to block parties." "Oh, stop living in the past," she snapped. "Look at you now. You are fine, and I am offering you a leg up. Do you know how much creators charge for a collab like this? I am offering it to you for free." I turned to face her. The kitchen lights were bright, reflecting off the stainless steel appliances she had bought with her TikTok money. "I do not want your exposure," I said, my voice low and steady. "I do not want to be a character in your show. And frankly, Vanessa, your video archive has never had me in it before. Let's keep it that way." The air in the kitchen temperature dropped 10 degrees. She did not scream. She just stared at me with a look of pure, unadulterated loathing. "Fine," she said, turning back to her phone. "Just stay out of the frame then. I do not want your negative energy ruining my lighting." But the real tragedy wasn't me. It was Maddie. Maddie was 18 now, in her senior year of high school. She was supposed to be enjoying the last months of her childhood, but instead, she was Vanessa's primary co-star. She looked exhausted. Her skin was pale, and her hands had a tremor I noticed when she held her fork at dinner. One afternoon, I found her in the bathroom, hyperventilating. She was sitting on the edge of the tub, gripping the porcelain so hard her knuckles were white. "Maddie?" I asked, kneeling beside her. "I cannot do the dance video," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. "My ankle hurts. Harper, it really hurts. But Mom promised the followers a dance reel for the new protein shake sponsorship. She said if I do not do it, we lose the contract." I felt a surge of rage that made my vision blur. Vanessa was monetizing her own daughter's pain. "You do not have to do it," I told her. "Tell her no." Maddie looked at me like I had suggested she grow wings and fly to Mars. "You do not tell Mom no. Harper, you just leave. I have to stay." That was the dynamic. I was the one who got away. Maddie was the hostage, and Vanessa was the warden who called it a sanctuary. The explosion happened 4 days later. It was a Tuesday evening. Vanessa had announced a special family dinner live stream to celebrate hitting a milestone number of subscribers. She had ordered expensive catering but plated it to look like she had cooked it herself. The table was set with the good china. Dad had been forced into a collared shirt. Maddie was wearing a dress she hated, smiling that brittle, terrifying smile. I was supposed to be at the hospital with Eleanor, but the nurses had sent me home early because she needed to sleep. I entered the house through the back door, exhausted, wearing sweatpants and a messy bun, carrying a bag of fast food because I was not allowed to eat the prop food on the table. I walked into the kitchen, not realizing the tripod was set up in the archway between the dining room and the living room. I walked straight through the background of the shot. I did not smile, I did not wave, I just looked tired, annoyed, and completely out of place in their pastel-colored fantasy. I opened the fridge to get a bottle of water, the light from the refrigerator casting a harsh glow on my face. Vanessa froze. She was in the middle of a monologue about the importance of family meals. She saw the comments start flying up on her iPad screen, which was propped up next to the casserole. Who is that? Is that the maid? Wait, isn't that the girl from the old photos? Why does she look so sad? The vibe just got weird. Vanessa. Who is the girl in the sweatpants? Vanessa's smile twitched. She tried to laugh it off. Oh, that is just... We have a guest staying with us. Real life. Right, guys? Sometimes it is chaotic. But the chat did not stop. She looks miserable. Why isn't she eating with you? I thought you said it was just the three of you. Vanessa's face turned a blotchy red under her foundation. She reached out and abruptly tapped the screen. Sorry, guys. Connection issues. Love you all. The screen went black. The ring lights were still humming. She turned around slowly. The silence in the room was heavier than lead. My father looked down at his plate, studying a green bean like it was the most interesting thing in the world. Maddie looked terrified. You, Vanessa whispered, pointing a manicured finger at me. You did that on purpose. I closed the water bottle. I just wanted water. Vanessa, I did not know you were live. You knew, she screamed, her voice finally breaking out of its carefully modulated register. You walked in here looking like a slob, looking miserable, just to humiliate me. Do you see these comments? They are asking why I'm excluding you. They are calling me a bad mother. If the shoe fits, I muttered, turning to walk toward the hallway. That was the spark. She moved faster than I expected. She crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and grabbed my upper arm. Her grip was shocking in its strength. She spun me around. Do not you walk away from me, she hissed. I have worked for 5 years to build this brand. I have sacrificed everything to make this family look perfect. And I will not let a jealous, ungrateful little brat ruin it because she is bitter that she has no talent. Let go of me, I said, my voice rising. She shook me. It was a violent, jerking motion that made my teeth rattle. You are selfish, she yelled. You have always been selfish. You come back here, eat our food, use our water, and you cannot even do the one thing I ask? You cannot even pretend to be happy for us? I am not happy for you, I shouted back, yanking my arm. But she held on. I am not happy that you are treating Maddie like a show pony. I am not happy that you treat Dad like a prop. And I am certainly not going to help you lie to people to sell detergent. She slapped me. It was not a closed fist punch, but it was hard. Her palm connected with my cheek with a sharp crack that echoed off the tile floors. My head snapped to the side. The sting was immediate, hot and blooming across my skin. The room went dead silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to stop. Vanessa was breathing hard, her chest heaving. She did not look sorry. She looked vindicated. She leaned in close, her face inches from mine, her eyes wide and manic. Nobody cares about you. Harper, she ground out, the words dripping with years of resentment. You think you are some big victim? You are nothing. If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. You are just a background character in my story, and you are ruining the shot. I stood there, feeling the heat on my cheek. I looked at my father. He was still staring at his plate. He had not moved. He had not stood up. He had not said a word. That was the answer I had needed for 13 years. I pulled my arm out of her grip. This time, she let me go, as if touching me was suddenly beneath her. I smoothed my shirt. My hands were shaking, but my voice was ice cold. I looked her dead in the eye. "We will see," I said. "We will see whose image is really ruined when the camera isn't filtered." I turned and walked out of the kitchen, past the ring lights, past the fake tulips, and down the hallway to the guest room. I slammed the door and locked it, sliding down to the floor, burying my face in my hands. I did not know then that the window in the living room had been cracked open to let in the evening breeze. I did not know that 20 feet away, crouching behind the hydrangeas in the side yard, Josie had been testing the zoom on her new phone. I did not know that she had hit record the moment the shouting started. And I certainly did not know that while I was crying on the floor of the guest room, Josie was sitting on her porch swing, watching the footage back, her thumb hovering over the post button, deciding that it was finally time to burn the neighborhood down. The internet does not sleep, and it certainly does not forgive. While I was lying on the floor of the guest room, staring at the ceiling and wishing the earth would open up and swallow the entire state of Indiana, a digital forest fire was starting to burn. It began with Josie. She was sitting on her back porch, still fuming about the time Vanessa had humiliated her on a live stream 3 weeks prior. Vanessa had called her trashy because Josie was listening to loud music while gardening. Josie decided it was time to return the favor. She did not edit the video. She did not add filters or music. She just uploaded the raw footage, grainy, shaky, and shot through a window screen, to her TikTok account, which had maybe 40 followers. She captioned it, "Stepmom goals in real life be like," and she tagged Vanessa. It was a petty, impulsive act of teenage rebellion. For the first 4 hours, nothing happened. It sat there with 12 views, mostly from Josie's friends. Then, at 3 a.m, a user named Exposing Family Vloggers found it. This account had 2 million followers and lived to deconstruct the fake perfection of online parenting. They stitched Josie's video. They zoomed in on the moment Vanessa's hand clamped onto my arm. They boosted the audio so the sound of the slap cracked like a whip. They put subtitles over Vanessa's snarling mouth. "Nobody cares about you. If you disappeared, no one would even notice." The caption on the new video read, "This is what happens when the ring light turns off. We see you. Girl in the gray sweatpants." By the time the sun rose over Maple Grove, the video had crossed 500,000 views. By the time I woke up at 8, it was at 5 million. I did not wake up naturally. I woke up because my phone was vibrating so hard against the nightstand it sounded like a drill. It was hot to the touch. I picked it up, squinting against the morning light, and saw hundreds of notifications cascading down the screen like a waterfall. Text messages from numbers I did not recognize, Instagram DMs, emails, and missed calls. So many missed calls. I saw a FaceTime request from Riley coming in right at that moment. I swiped to answer, my voice thick with sleep. "Riley? Is everything okay?" Riley's face filled the screen. She was in our dorm room in Chicago, but she looked like she had just run a marathon. "Harper," she practically screamed. "Do not go into the kitchen. Do not go on Twitter. Actually, no. Do go on Twitter. You are trending." I sat up, clutching the sheet. "What are you talking about?" "The video. Harper." The neighbor kid posted it. "The whole world has seen Vanessa hit you. The whole world heard what she said." My stomach dropped through the floor. I switched apps, opening TikTok. I did not even have to search. It was the first thing on my For You page. There I was, pixelated and sad, walking through the background. There was Vanessa, her face contorted in rage, and there was the sound, playing on a loop, turning my trauma into a beat. "Nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about you." But it was not just the video, it was the response. I scrolled, my fingers trembling. A girl with blue hair was crying in her car, stitching the video. "My mom said this to me when I was 16. I thought I was the only one." A lawyer in a suit was analyzing the clip. This is clear evidence of domestic battery and emotional abuse. If this young woman needs representation, my DMs are open. A group of teenagers in a cafeteria were holding signs. We care. The hashtag Nobody Cares challenge had morphed into something else. It was not a mockery. It was a roll call. People were posting photos of themselves. People who had been the black sheep, the scapegoats, the invisible children, and captioning them with "I am still here." I walked out of the bedroom, feeling like I was moving through water. The hallway was silent. I found Vanessa in the kitchen. She was not cooking. She was standing in the middle of the room, still wearing her silk bathrobe. Her hair was a mess. She was holding her phone with both hands, staring at it as if it were a bomb that had just detonated. My father was sitting at the table, his head in his hands. He looked up when I entered. His face was gray. "Harper," he croaked. Vanessa spun around. Her eyes were red and swollen. For a second, I thought she might attack me again, but the fight had gone out of her. Panic had replaced it. "You," she whispered. "Did you tell her to film that? Did you set me up?" I leaned against the door frame. Crossing my arms, I felt a strange, cold calm settling over me. "I did not do anything. Vanessa, you did this. You said nobody cared. Turns out, you were wrong." Her phone pinged. Another notification. Another brand dropping her. She let out a strangled sob and started pacing. "I have to fix this. I have to control the narrative. It is just a misunderstanding. They do not know the context." She set up her ring light. I watched in disbelief as she pulled an oversized beige hoodie over her silk pajamas, the universal uniform of the YouTuber apology video. She sat down on the floor in front of the dishwasher, trying to look small and humble. She hit record. "Hi guys," she said, her voice trembling, forcing tears into her eyes. "I usually do not do this, but I need to address the video that is circulating. That was a really hard moment for our family. We have been under so much stress. The clip is taken completely out of context. Harper and I have a complicated relationship, and we were just playing around. We are a family that loves loud and fights loud, but we love each other." She posted it. It backfired instantly. Within 10 minutes, the comments section was a bloodbath. "Playing around? You hit her. We can hear the hate in your voice. Lady, stop gaslighting us." And then, the internet detectives went to work. They started digging through 5 years of her content. They found the birthday party video where I was holding the camera and my reflection was visible in a balloon, alone. They found the Christmas vlog where there were only 3 stockings on the mantle. They found the graduation post for Maddie where Vanessa wrote, "So proud of my only girl." They built a timeline of erasure. They proved that I wasn't just having a bad day. I had been systematically cropped out of my own life. Then came the comment that changed everything for me. I was sitting on the back porch, hiding from the tension inside, scrolling through the deluge. A comment on a viral repost had been pinned to the top. It was from a username I did not recognize. Something generic like user8892, but the text made my heart stop. I went to college with Harper at Lakehurst. I was in her design cohort. She is not just some sad girl in the background. She is brilliant. She stayed up all night helping me fix my final project even though she was working 2 jobs. She is the most talented editor in our program, and she never takes credit for anything. She is amazing, and she deserves better than this. I stared at the words. She is brilliant. For years, Vanessa had told the world I was fragile, stable, boring. She had painted me as a liability, but here was a stranger, or a quiet friend, telling the world I had value, and the world was listening. The comment had 40,000 likes. My phone rang again. It was a local number. I answered it cautiously. "Hello?" "Hi. Is this Harper Lane?" a woman's voice asked. Brisk and professional. "This is Sarah Jenkins from the Indianapolis Star. We are running a story on the video. We have already reached out to your stepmother, but we would really love to hear your side. People are asking who you are." Harper. I looked at the phone. My side? No one had ever asked for my side. I looked through the glass door into the kitchen. Vanessa was screaming at my father now, blaming him for not closing the blinds. Maddie was nowhere to be seen, likely hiding in her room, terrified that her friends were seeing her mother unravel. I thought about Eleanor in the hospital bed, her heart weak. I thought about Maddie, who was just as much a victim of Vanessa's perfectionism as I was. If I spoke now, if I poured gasoline on this fire, it would burn everything down. "No comment," I said, and hung up. I was not ready, not yet. I sat on the porch steps. The late morning sun was hitting the pavement. Across the fence, I saw Josie's bedroom window. The blinds were drawn, but I knew she was in there, probably watching the chaos she had unleashed. I opened TikTok one last time. I clicked on the sound. My stepmother's voice. "Nobody cares about you." It had been used in 60,000 videos in 24 hours. I watched a video of a soldier coming home to an empty airport, using the sound ironically. I watched a video of a girl showing her acceptance letter to Harvard after her teacher told her she wouldn't make it. And then I saw a comment under the original video that made my breath hitch. "I grew up in a house like this. I thought I was crazy for 20 years. Thank you for showing me that it wasn't my fault." Tears pricked my eyes. Hot, fast tears that I could not stop. For 12 years, I had believed the lie. I believed I was unlovable because the person who was supposed to mother me had decided I was. I believed I was invisible because she refused to look at me. But the math had changed. I looked at the number under the video. 5.2 million views, 300,000 comments. 300,000 people had looked at my life for 10 seconds and said, "That is wrong." 300,000 people had validated my reality. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my hoodie. Vanessa was wrong. The data proved it. She had said nobody cared. I looked at the screen, scrolling through the wall of support, the anger on my behalf, the strangers offering me guest rooms and job interviews and legal advice. She was statistically, undeniably, spectacularly wrong. And as I sat there, listening to the birds chirp over the sound of Vanessa's muffled shouting inside, I realized something else. I did not need them to care about me to save me. I had already saved myself. I had gotten into college. I had built a life. I had friends who would go to war for me. But God, it felt good to have the world finally turn the lights on. I stood up. I was not going to hide in the guest room anymore. I was going to walk into that kitchen, make myself a sandwich, and eat it right in the middle of her studio. And if she told me to move, I would tell her to check her notifications. I sat on the floor of the guest room, the same place where I had cried only 48 hours earlier, but the air felt different now. It was no longer heavy with shame. It was vibrating with potential. I held my phone in my hand, my thumb hovering over the Create Account button. I typed in the handle slowly, checking each letter to make sure I did not mistype my own reclamation. At Harper, not invisible. I did not use a ring light. I did not put on foundation to cover the dark circles under my eyes. I sat by the window, letting the gray Indiana afternoon light wash over me. I placed the phone against a stack of old textbooks and hit record. I did not start by screaming. I did not start by calling Vanessa a monster. I simply held up the worn leather journal that Eleanor had given me when I was 12. I opened it to the first page, where my younger self had pressed the pen so hard into the paper that the ink had bled through. "I am the girl who was told nobody cares." I said to the camera, my voice steady but quiet, "But for the last 12 years, I have been keeping receipts. This is the rest of the story." I posted it. Then, I turned off notifications. I did not want the dopamine hit of likes. I wanted to build a case. Over the next 3 days, while Vanessa barricaded herself in the master bedroom with a crisis management team she could barely afford, I turned my TikTok account into a documentary series. I used the skills Dr. Novak had taught me. I treated my own life like a data set that needed to be visualized. I posted a video titled, "The Cost of Being Cropped Out." I showed a family photo from 3 years ago. At first glance, it was a happy shot of Greg, Vanessa, and Maddie at a pumpkin patch. Then I used the green screen effect to point to the shadow in the bottom right corner. That is my shadow. I explained, my voiceover calm and analytical. I was holding the bags. I was holding the extra coats. I was holding the camera. If you look at the reflection in my father's sunglasses, you can see me standing there. I was present, but I was not permitted to be visible. I posted another one called The Janitor at the Party. I showed clips from old videos Vanessa had posted where she bragged about how clean the house was after a party. I paused the video frame by frame, circling the figure in the background. Me, hauling garbage bags and scrubbing dishes while the family opened gifts. I was not invited to the party. I said I was the crew. I did not attack Maddie. That was the one rule Riley and Dr. Novak helped me set. Riley was on FaceTime with me every night, acting as my digital bodyguard. Do not show the street signs, Riley warned, her eyes scanning my background for identifiable details. And do not mention Maddie's anxiety. The internet will eat her alive if you make her a target. Keep the focus on the system. Harper, attack the pattern, not the people. Dr. Novak sent me emails that read like military directives. You are deconstructing a narrative, he wrote. Keep your emotion out of your voice. Let the facts do the screaming. So I did. I was surgical. I was precise. And the internet responded with a reverence I had never seen before. People stopped leaving angry comments and started leaving thoughtful ones. They started sharing their own stories of being the invisible child, the glass child, the convenient prop. Then came the email that changed the trajectory of my career. It popped up in my inbox on a Thursday morning. The subject line was simply, Consultation Inquiry. It was from a woman named Elena Ross, the director of the Northlight Impact Lab, a prestigious nonprofit in Chicago that I had studied in my sociology classes. Dear Harper, the email read, We have been watching your series. You are doing something we have been trying to achieve with million-dollar ad campaigns, and you are doing it with a smartphone and a journal. We are launching a national initiative called We See You to support adults recovering from narcissistic family systems. We do not just want your story, we want your brain. We want you to come on board as a lead creative consultant. I stared at the screen. They did not want the victim. They wanted the editor. They wanted the data analyst. For the first time, someone was offering me a seat at the table not because they felt sorry for me, but because they respected me. Down the hall, a different kind of campaign was being launched. Vanessa had hired a budget PR firm from Indianapolis. They were clearly panicking. They advised her to go on the offensive. She started posting videos again, but this time, she was not the perfect stepmom. She was the victim of a malicious smear campaign. You guys do not understand editing, she cried in a video. Wearing no makeup to look more sympathetic, that clip was taken out of context. Harper is a media major. She knows how to manipulate footage. She is twisting everything to hurt us. Then, she made a fatal error. She posted a proof of love photo dump. Look at us, the caption read. Look how happy we were. She uploaded 10 photos of our family over the years. In one of them, I was actually smiling. It was from a barbecue 4 years ago. I was laughing at something someone off camera had said. See, Vanessa wrote, does this look like an abused child? It took the internet less than an hour to dismantle her defense. A user named PhotoSleuth99 made a video analyzing the barbecue photo. Okay, let us look at the metadata, the user said, but let us also look at the composition. Harper is smiling. Yes, but look at her hands. She is holding a tray of raw hamburger meat. Look at everyone else. They are holding drinks. They are sitting. She is serving. And if you zoom in on the background, you can see Vanessa pointing a finger, directing her. She is not a guest at this barbecue. She is the staff. The comment section exploded. Nice try. Vanessa, you just proved her point. She is smiling because she is surviving, not because she is happy. Vanessa deleted the post within 2 hours, but screenshots live forever. She had tried to use my image to save herself, and instead, she had handed the jury the final piece of evidence. That night, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was not from a stranger. It was from Greg. My father had not spoken to me since the slap. He had been a ghost in the house, moving between the garage and the bedroom, avoiding my gaze. I opened the message. It was a block of text, gray and heavy. I hope you are proud of yourself. Harper, you have effectively killed Vanessa's career. The sponsorship with the cookware company just pulled out. That was $5,000 a month we needed. You have humiliated us in front of the entire country. We can show our faces at church, but barely. You are destroying this family for 15 minutes of fame. I read it twice. I looked for the question. I looked for, "Are you okay?" I looked for, "I am sorry she hit you." I looked for, "I should have protected you." There was nothing. Just a ledger of lost income and damaged reputation. I did not reply. I realized then that my father was not a hostage. He was a collaborator. He had sold his silence for a quiet life and a dual income, and he was angry that I had stopped the payments. I put the phone down and walked to the window. The sun was setting over Maple Grove. I felt a profound sense of grief, but it was a clean grief. It was the grief of a funeral, not the anxiety of a waiting room. The relationship was dead. I could finally stop checking for a pulse. The next morning, the call came from the network in Chicago. It was the producer of the Daily Hour, the biggest daytime talk show in the Midwest. "Harper," she said, her voice fast and professional, "we want you on the show. Monday morning, we will fly you out. We want to hear your side. We will give you the full segment. Vanessa is trying to get on, but we want you first." I stood in the guest room, looking at my packed suitcase. I had already decided I was leaving that afternoon. I was going back to Chicago. I was going to take the job at Northlight. "I will do it," I said to the producer. "Great," she said. "We will send a car. We can talk about the questions." "Wait," I interrupted. "I have a condition." There was a pause on the line. "What kind of condition?" "I am not coming on to talk about Vanessa," I said, my voice firm. "I am not coming on to participate in a catfight. If I come on that show, we are going to talk about the pattern. We are going to talk about the We See You campaign. We are going to talk about the thousands of people in your comment section who are saying they went through the same thing." I took a breath. "If you make this about a wicked stepmother, I am not interested. But if you make this about the children who survived them, I will be there." The producer was silent for a long moment. I could hear her tapping a pen against her desk. "Okay," she said finally, "we can do that, but we are going to show the clip." "I know," I said, "show it. It does not hurt me anymore. It is just data now." I hung up the phone. I zipped up my suitcase. I did not say goodbye to Vanessa. I did not say goodbye to Greg. I simply left the key to the guest room on the kitchen counter, next to the ring light that was currently unplugged and gathering dust. I walked out to my car, threw my bag in the back seat, and drove toward the highway. I was going back to Chicago. I was going to be on television. But this time, I wasn't going to be the girl in the background. I was going to be the one holding the microphone. Before I boarded the plane to Chicago for the interview that would define the rest of my life, I had one stop to make. I drove to the small rehabilitation center where Eleanor was staying. She had been discharged from the hospital 3 days prior, but her heart was still too fragile for her to go home alone. She was sitting in a wheelchair by the window, looking out at a parking lot that was gray with rain. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her skin like parchment paper, but her eyes were still sharp, burning with that same fierce intelligence that had saved me when I was 12. I sat down beside her and told her everything. I told her about the 5 million views. I told her about the hashtag. I told her about Vanessa's disastrous apology video. Eleanor listened without interrupting. She just nodded slowly, her hands folded in her lap. When I finished, she turned to me and smiled, a dry, thin stretching of her lips. "The truth finally found a microphone," she said. Then, she reached into the side pocket of her bag. Her hands were shaking, but her grip was firm. She pulled out a manila envelope that looked ancient. The edges were soft and worn, and it smelled like cedar and old ink. "I have been waiting for you to be ready for this," she said. "I wanted to give it to you when you turned 21, but Greg, your father begged me not to. He said you were not responsible enough. He said you would sell it and waste the money. He said he was protecting you." She handed me the envelope, But I think he was just protecting his renovation budget, she added. I opened the clasp. Inside was a legal document, stamped and dated 2 months before my biological mother died. It was a last will and testament. I scanned the legalese, my eyes catching on the bolded phrases. Primary beneficiary, real property situated at 424 Maple Drive. To be held in trust until said beneficiary reaches the age of 21. I stopped breathing. The house, I whispered. Your mother bought that house. Harper, Eleanor said, her voice hard. She paid the down payment with her inheritance. Greg's name was on the deed too, but in her will, she left her share entirely to you. And because of the way the title was structured, when you turned 21, the controlling interest was supposed to transfer to you. Greg has a right to live there, technically, but he does not have the right to own it. Not anymore. I stared at the paper. For 3 years, since the day I turned 21, I had been the legal owner of the house where Vanessa had made me feel like a trespasser. I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't just emotional abuse, it was theft. They had been living in my house, filming their perfect life in my living room, and telling me I was lucky to have a roof over my head. Go see Arthur Harris, Eleanor told me. He was your mother's lawyer. He's retired now, but he kept the originals. He's been waiting for my call. I did not go to the airport. I went to a law office in downtown Indianapolis, but I did not go alone. The Northlight Impact Lab had moved fast. When I told them I was looking into legal options, they connected me with Amelia Brooks. Amelia was a shark in a silk blouse. She was 30 years old, specialized in financial abuse within families, and she had been following my TikTok series with the intensity of a forensic accountant. She met me at the coffee shop across from the old lawyer's office. I handed her the will. She read it. Then she opened her laptop and started typing furiously, pulling up public property records. Her eyebrows shot up. Harper, she said, turning the screen toward me. You are not going to believe this. On the screen was a property history for the house on Maple Drive. There is a lien on the property, Amelia said, pointing to a line item dated 18 months ago. A second mortgage, a home equity line of credit for $60,000. I stared at the number. $60,000. Who signed for this? I asked, though I already knew. Greg Lane, Amelia said. He signed as the sole owner, which, according to this will, is fraud. He failed to execute the transfer of the deed when you turned 21, kept the title in his name, and then used the house, your house, as collateral for a loan. Why? I asked. Why did they need $60,000? Dad has a steady job. Amelia tapped a few more keys. She pulled up a folder of screenshots she had compiled. Look at the timeline. Harper, 18 months ago, that is exactly when Vanessa rebranded. That is when the kitchen was remodeled. That is when she bought the professional camera gear. That is when she started running paid ads to boost her follower count. I felt the air leave my lungs. My father had stolen my inheritance to fund Vanessa's influencer career. He had mortgaged the roof over his head to buy ring lights and granite countertops, so his wife could pretend to be rich on the internet. It gets worse, Amelia said gently. She opened another tab. Since the scandal broke, we have been getting tips. A former assistant of Vanessa's, a girl she fired for bad vibes, forwarded us some emails. She showed me a thread between Vanessa and a potential sponsor, a children's clothing brand, from 6 months ago. The brand rep wrote, "We would love to see a full family shot for the holiday campaign. Does your stepdaughter want to be included? We love a blended family angle." Vanessa's reply, "Oh, no. Harper is not really part of the brand image. She is a sweet girl, but she does not fit the aesthetic we are cultivating. She is a bit gloomy. And frankly, she does not test well with our demographic. Let us just stick to Maddie. She is the face of the family. She does not test well." I was not a daughter. I was a failed product launch. I closed the laptop. My hands were trembling, not with sadness, but with a cold, terrifying rage. "I need to see him," I said. Amelia nodded. "Do it. I will wait in the car. Record it if you can. But get the truth." I drove to the house, The driveway was empty except for my father's truck. Vanessa's car was gone, probably at a lawyer's office or hiding at a friend's house. I used my key, the one I had almost left behind. My father was in the kitchen. He was sitting at the island, staring at a stack of bills. The granite countertop, the one paid for with my mother's money, gleamed under the expensive pendant lights. He looked up when I walked in. He looked 10 years older than he had a week ago. "Harper," he said, his voice hoarse, "I thought you went back to Chicago." I walked up to the island and slammed the copy of the will down on the marble. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "I know, Dad," I said. He looked at the paper. He did not touch it. He went pale. "I know about the will," I continued, my voice steady. "I know the house was supposed to be mine 3 years ago, and I know about the $60,000. He flinched. "Harper, listen," he stammered, standing up. "It is complicated. We were going to pay it back. The channel was taking off. Vanessa said we just needed a little capital to get to the next tier of sponsorships. It was an investment. For the family." "For the family?" I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "You mortgaged Mom's house? The only thing she left me, to buy a kitchen for Vanessa? You risked my inheritance so she could have better lighting for her TikToks?" He rubbed his face with his hands. "You do not understand the pressure. Harper, she wanted this so bad. She said if we made it work, we would all be rich. We could pay for your grad school. We could—" "Stop," I cut him off. "You did not do it for me. You did it because you are afraid of her. You did it because it was easier to rob your daughter than to tell your wife no." I looked around the kitchen. I looked at the high-end stove. I looked at the perfectly arranged spice rack. It was all stolen. Every inch of this perfection was built on a crime against me. "The bank is calling." "Dad," I said quietly. Amelia checked. "You are 3 months behind on the payments. The ad revenue stopped the day the video went viral. You are going to lose the house." He slumped back onto the stool. I can fix it. I just need time." "You do not have time," I said, "and you do not have a house." I leaned across the counter. "I am going on the show. Dad, I am going to Chicago. And I was going to just talk about the emotional stuff. I was going to be nice. But now I am bringing this." I tapped the will. "I am not going to let you lose this house to the bank. I am going to take it back. Legally." He looked up at me, his eyes wet. "Harper, please, if you do this, if you expose the financial stuff, Vanessa will go to jail. I could go to jail for fraud." I looked at him. I remembered the way he had looked at his plate while Vanessa slapped me. I remembered the way he had let me disappear for 12 years. "You should have thought about that before you sold me out for a ring light," I said. I turned around and walked out. I met Amelia in the car. "Did you get it?" she asked. "I got it," I said, buckling my seatbelt. We drove to the airport. The producer called me while I was in the security line. "Harper," she said, "we are finalizing the script. Are you sure you are comfortable showing the TikTok clip?" I held the phone to my ear. I looked at the TSA agent checking IDs. I looked at the sign that said Chicago. "I am comfortable," I said, "but we need to add a segment." "What kind of segment?" the producer asked, sounding wary. "I have some new documents." I said, "We are not just talking about feelings anymore. We are talking about foreclosure. We are talking about theft." I took a deep breath. My stepmother said nobody cares about me. She said if I disappeared, it wouldn't matter. I am going to show the world that not only do I exist, but I own the stage she is standing on. I boarded the plane. I watched Maple Grove disappear beneath the clouds. I was not just a girl with a viral video anymore. I was a landlord serving an eviction notice to the people who had tried to erase me. And the whole world was invited to the open house. The studio lights were brighter than I expected. They were hot, blinding white beams that made the dust motes in the air look like floating diamonds. The giant screen behind me went dark, but the echo of the slap seemed to hang in the room. The audience was silent. It was not the polite silence of people waiting for a segment to start. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of 300 people holding their breath at once. I sat in the beige armchair opposite the host, a woman named Diane, who was known for making politicians cry. She looked at me, then down at her cue cards, and then back at me. She set the cards down. "Harper," she said, her voice soft but amplified perfectly by the lavalier microphone. "We just watched a woman, your stepmother, physically assault you, but you told my producers backstage that the physical part was the least painful thing about that video. Can you explain that to us?" I looked out at the darkened rows of seats. I could not see faces, just outlines. The slap was just punctuation. I said into the silence. It was the exclamation mark at the end of a very long sentence. The real pain was not her hand hitting my face. It was the 10 years before that. It was being 12 years old and realizing that in a house full of cameras, I was the only thing that did not reflect light. I took a breath. My voice did not shake. I was taught that my value was conditional on my invisibility. I was taught that if I wanted to be loved, I had to be a ghost. I had to hold the boom mic. I had to edit the footage. I had to make them look happy while I stood in the dark. The slap hurt. Yes, but being told nobody cares? That was just her saying the quiet part out loud. Diane leaned forward. "If Vanessa is watching this right now," she asked, "what would you want to say to her?" I looked directly into the camera lens. The red tally light was glowing. "I do not want to say anything to her," I answered. "I do not need her to believe me. I am not here for her. I am here for the kid in Ohio or Texas or London who is watching this on their phone right now, hiding in their bathroom because their mom just told them they are worthless. I need them to know that they are not crazy. I need them to know that feeling pain is not a weakness. It is evidence." Diane nodded slowly. Then, she touched her earpiece. Her expression shifted. A ripple of tension went through the floor managers standing in the wings. "Harper," Diane said, her voice dropping an octave. "We have a development. Your stepmother, Vanessa, contacted our producers this morning. She is actually in the building. She has asked to come out and explain her side of the story." The audience gasped. A low murmur ran through the room like a wave. I froze. My hands gripped the armrests of the chair. This was an ambush. They wanted a cat fight. They wanted good television. Diane looked at me, searching for permission or panic. "You do not have to do this," she said. I looked at the backstage curtain. I thought about the house on Maple Drive. I thought about the mortgage fraud. I thought about the $60,000. "Let her come out," I said. "If she comes out, I will stay right here. But I'm not going to argue with her. I am just going to tell the truth." The music swelled ominously. The stage doors opened. Vanessa walked out. She was not wearing her usual bright colors. She was wearing a soft gray cardigan and flat shoes. Her hair was pulled back in a loose, messy bun. She looked tired. She looked fragile. It was a costume, I realized. It was the victim of cyberbullying collection. She sat in the chair next to Diane, refusing to look at me. She brought a tissue to her eyes immediately. "I just want to say," Vanessa began, her voice trembling, "that I love Harper. I have always loved Harper. That video. You have to understand the pressure we are under. The social media landscape is so toxic. You have to be perfect. You have to be on 24 hours a day." I snapped. "I am human. But the way this has been edited, the way people are twisting my words, it is a witch hunt." She turned to the audience, pleading, "We are a loving family. We have dinner together every night. This narrative that I ignore her is false. It is just, she is shy. She never liked the camera. I was respecting her privacy. She was good. I had to give her that. She was really good." A few people in the audience nodded sympathetically. Diane turned to me. "Harper?" I turned my body so I was facing Vanessa. It was the first time I had looked her in the eyes since I left the key on the counter. "You respected my privacy?" I asked. Vanessa nodded vigorously. "Yes, I always—" "Vanessa." I cut her off. My voice was not loud, but it sliced through her monologue like a razor. "You have posted 1,422 videos on your channel in the last 5 years. I counted them. I ran the data." I leaned forward. "In those 422 videos. How many times does my face appear? Vanessa blinked. Well, I told you, I was… How many? I repeated. She stammered. I do not know the exact number. Harper, I… 0, I said. The room went dead silent again. 0 times. I continued. Unless I was holding a bag, unless I was cleaning up in the background, unless I was a shadow and a reflection, you did not keep me off camera to protect my privacy. You kept me off camera because I did not fit the brand. You told a sponsor I was too gloomy to sell children's clothes. You told the neighbors I was unstable. You did not protect me. You erased me. Vanessa opened her mouth to argue, but no sound came out. She looked at the audience. The sympathy was gone. The illusion had shattered. She was just a woman in a gray cardigan sitting next to the daughter she had tried to delete. I turned back to Diane. She said nobody cares about me. I think the ratings for this segment prove her wrong. 3 weeks later, the setting was very different. There were no cameras. There were no studio lights. There was only the smell of lemon polish and fear in the conference room of Amelia Brooks' law firm. We sat around a long mahogany table. On one side, there was me, Amelia, and Mr. Harris, Eleanor's attorney who looked like a hawk in a tweed suit. On the other side sat Greg, Vanessa, and a court-appointed mediator. Vanessa looked smaller here than she had on television. The brand deals were gone. The comments section had turned into a graveyard of her career. She was picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. My father refused to look at me. He was staring at the pile of documents in the center of the table. We are here to discuss the settlement regarding the property at 424 Maple Drive, Amelia announced, opening a folder. She slid a paper across the table. This is the deed, Amelia said, and this is the will of the late Catherine Lane. As we have established, the title should have transferred to Harper Lane 3 years ago. The current mortgage, taken out by Mr. Lane 18 months ago, constitutes acts of fraud and misappropriation of funds. Greg flinched. We can fight this, Vanessa's lawyer said, though he sounded tired. It was a marital asset. Mr. Lane had power of attorney during her minority. He did not have it when she was 21, Amelia snapped, and he certainly did not have the right to liquidate her equity to buy… What was it? She consulted a spreadsheet. High-end recording equipment, a kitchen remodel, and $40,000 in paid social media promotion. Vanessa looked up, her eyes flashing. We were building a business. It was for the family's future. It was for your vanity, I said quietly. Vanessa slammed her hand on the table. You ungrateful little… Excuse me, Amelia interrupted. We have one more witness regarding the character of the defendant and the pattern of financial exploitation. Amelia nodded to the receptionist at the door. The door opened. A woman walked in. She was wearing a nurse's uniform and looked like a faded, worn-out version of Vanessa. Vanessa gasped. The color drained from her face completely. Claire? She whispered. It was her younger sister. I had not seen Aunt Claire in 10 years. She had stopped coming to Thanksgiving when I was 14. Claire sat down next to me. She did not look at Vanessa. She looked at the mediator. My sister has a habit of using people, Claire said, her voice flat and exhausted. 2 years ago, our mother was dying in a nursing home in Wisconsin. Vanessa went to visit her once. She pulled out her phone and placed it on the table. She filmed a video by Mom's bedside. She cried. She talked about the heartbreak of dementia. She used the hashtag #DaughterDuty. It got 50,000 likes. Claire looked up, tears standing in her eyes. Then she left. She left 5 minutes after she got the footage. She never paid a dime toward Mom's care. She never visited again when Mom died. Vanessa posted a tribute video before she even called me back to help with the funeral arrangements. She used our dying mother for content, just like she used her husband for money, and just like she used Harper for labor. The room was silent. This was not just bad parenting. This was pathology. Greg made a sound. It was a choked, strangled noise. He looked at Vanessa. He looked at her as if he were seeing a stranger for the first time. You left your mother? Greg whispered. You told me you were going up there every weekend for a month. You told me the money from the joint account was for her medical bills. Vanessa turned on him. Oh, shut up. Greg, I was managing the brand. I was building an empire. Greg stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. He looked at me. His eyes were red, rimmed with sleeplessness and shame. Give me the pen, he said to his lawyer. Greg, no, Vanessa shrieked, grabbing his arm. We can win this. We just need to stall. Give me the damn pen, Greg roared, shaking her off. He took the pen. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely hold it. He signed the document Amelia had prepared. I am done, he said, his voice breaking. I am done with the lies. I am done with the cameras. Amelia pulled the document back. The terms are as follows. She read, full ownership of the property transfers to Harper Lane immediately. Mr. and Mrs. Lane have 60 days to vacate the premises. Mr. Lane agrees to pay restitution for the unauthorized loan in monthly installments. And Mrs. Lane's. Amelia slid a second document toward Vanessa. This is a permanent injunction. You are forbidden from using Harper's name, image, or likeness in any future media, print, or digital content. You will delete all existing footage that contains her image, however brief. If you violate this, you will be sued for damages starting at $100,000 per infraction. Vanessa stared at the paper. She looked at Greg, who was staring out the window. She looked at Claire, who was refusing to make eye contact. She looked at me. I hate you, she hissed. Sign it, I said, or we go to trial for the fraud. And I do not think you will look good in an orange jumpsuit. Vanessa, it does not fit your aesthetic. She snatched the pen. She signed her name with a violent, jagged scrawl. I took the documents. I felt the weight of the paper in my hands. It was heavy, like the journal Eleanor had given me. Thank you, I said. I stood up. I did not say goodbye. I walked out of the conference room, past the receptionist, and out into the Chicago street. The air was cold and clean. I took a deep breath. I owned a house. I owned my name. And for the first time in my life, the credits were rolling, and I was the one directing the show. The ring lights are gone. That is the first thing people notice when they walk into the house on Maple Grove now. The walls, which were once painted a soulless, camera-ready beige, are now a deep, calming sage green. There are no tripods in the corners. There are no meticulously staged bowls of wax fruit on the kitchen island. Instead, there are bookshelves overflowing with novels that have actually been read. There are spider plants hanging in the windows, soaking up the light that used to be blocked by diffusers. And on the small side table by the armchair, there is a worn leather journal, its cover soft from years of being held like a lifeline. It has been 1 year since the judge signed the order. It has been 1 year since Vanessa and Greg packed their boxes and left. I stood in the center of the living room, holding my phone. I was 25 years old, a graduate of Lakehurst University, and a full-time consultant for the Northlight Impact Lab. But on weekends, I was just Harper, the owner of a house that was finally learning how to be a home. I hit record. Remember the phrase, "nobody cares about you"? I asked the camera, keeping my voice low and conversational. That video has been viewed 28 million times. 28 million people watched the worst moment of my life. But the important number isn't the views. The important number isn't the likes. I walked through the house as I filmed, the stabilizer keeping the shot smooth. The important number is the amount of people who messaged me saying, "I believe you." I turned the camera toward the room that used to be the studio, the place where Vanessa would film her fake cooking tutorials. It was different now. There were easels set up. There were drop cloths on the floor stained with acrylics and charcoal. And sitting in the middle of the mess, wearing an oversized t-shirt and jeans covered in blue smudges, was Maddie. She did not look up when I walked in. She was focused on her canvas, her hair pulled back in a messy knot, her face completely bare of makeup. She looked tired, but she looked real. She had moved out of Vanessa's apartment 3 months ago, finally breaking the cycle of enmeshment. She was still healing. We both were. But she was painting her own pictures now. not just posing for someone else's. I do not tell this story to destroy anyone. I said in the voiceover, I tell it so that the people who are currently being cropped out of the frame know something vital. You do not have to wait for anyone to turn the camera back to you. You can pick up the lens yourself. I put the phone down. It was almost time. Every Saturday, I opened the doors of the house for a workshop. It was a small group, usually 10 or 12 people. They were adults who had grown up in narcissistic family systems, people who had been the scapegoats, the invisible children, the props. We did not record these sessions. There were no cameras allowed. It was just a safe space to sit in a living room where no one was performing. The doorbell rang. I went to answer it. People trickled in, shaking off the Indiana rain. There was a young man from the next town over who had been disowned for not being a doctor. There was a woman in her 50s who had just realized her mother was never going to love her. We made tea. We sat in a circle on the rug and the mismatched armchairs I had bought from a thrift store. Then, the door opened one last time. I froze. Standing on the porch was my father. Greg looked older, his hair was thinner, and he was wearing a coat that looked a little too big for him. He was holding a wet umbrella, looking unsure of whether he should step onto the mat. He did not look like the man who had mortgaged my future for a kitchen remodel. He looked like a man who had lost everything and was trying to figure out if anything could be salvaged from the wreckage. He did not say anything. He just looked at me, his eyes filled with a terrifying amount of shame. I stood there, holding a mug of chamomile tea. The old Harper, the one who wanted to be seen so badly, might have slammed the door. The angry Harper from last year might have screamed at him to leave. But I was not angry anymore. I was just the owner of the house. I stepped back. I did not hug him. I did not smile. I just nodded toward the back of the room. He stepped inside, closing the umbrella with shaking hands. He took off his shoes, placing them neatly by the door. He walked past the circle of people, keeping his head down, and sat in a folding chair in the very back row, near the kitchen. He did not speak during the session. He just listened. He listened as a woman talked about how her father had let her stepmother lock her out of the house. He listened as a man talked about being used as a pawn in his parents' divorce. I watched my father's face as he listened. I saw him flinch. I saw him wipe his eyes when he thought no one was looking. For the first time in his life, he wasn't looking at a curated version of reality. He was listening to the raw, unedited footage of the damage men like him leave behind. When the workshop ended and the last car had pulled away, the house was quiet. I began stacking the mugs. My father was still sitting in the folding chair. He looked at his hands. I do not deserve to be here, he said, his voice rough. I did not stop stacking the mugs. No, I said, you do not. He looked up at me. The silence stretched between us, but it wasn't the empty silence of my childhood. It was a heavy, necessary silence. I am sorry, he whispered. I know that word does not fix the mortgage. I know it does not give you back your childhood, but I am sorry I let you become invisible. I turned to face him. I looked at the man who had failed me, and I realized that I did not need his apology to be whole. I had already built a whole life without it. But I also realized that he was finally, for the first time, actually seeing me, not as an inconvenience, not as a blurred figure in the background, but as the protagonist of the story. Thank you for leaving the chair out, he said, gesturing to the empty seat next to him. I looked at the chair. I am not keeping the seat for you. Dad, I said gently, I am keeping it for anyone who finally chooses to show up. He nodded, understanding the boundary. He stood up, put on his coat, and walked to the door. He paused, looking at the sage-green walls, at the messy art room where Maddie was washing her brushes, at the life I had built on the ashes of his mistakes. You did good. Harper, he said. Then he walked out into the rain. That night, I posted the final video. I sat on the porch swing, the same place where I had read the comments that saved my life. I held up a piece of paper. On it, I had written, I see you. The video cut to a montage. It was not just me. It was hundreds of other people, strangers from the internet, who had stitched my videos over the last year. There was a teenager in Tokyo holding a sign that said, "I am important." There was a grandmother in Texas holding a sign that said, "It was not my fault." There was a man in London holding a sign that said, "I care." It was a mosaic of survivors. It was a digital quilt of people who had refused to be erased. The caption on the video read, "Stepmother beat me and said, 'Nobody cares.' Turns out, millions did. But most importantly, I finally learned how to care for myself." I watched the upload bar fill, 100%. I put the phone down. I did not wait for the views to roll in. I did not check the analytics. I picked up Eleanor's leather journal, opened it to a fresh, blank page, and wrote a new heading. Chapter 1. The story of the invisible girl was over. The story of Harper Lane was just beginning. If anyone has ever told you that nobody cares, please remember this. It only takes one person showing up, and that person can be you, to break every lie they have built around you for years. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment down below and share your thoughts on Harper's journey. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button so this story can be heard by even more people. Stay seen, everyone.